Today, in the Alamo Music Sound Lab, we're going to be checking out the Moog One synthesizer. We'll be talking about some of the features, how cool this keyboard is, and we'll take a listen to it in just a moment. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Roland Bettis. This is Alamo Music Center. Check us out online, alamomusic.com, and hop on our YouTube channel, Alamo Music Sound Lab. We have lots of videos coming up in the future from more classic and modern synthesizers, samplers, and some effects processors. Check it out. What makes the Moog One so special? It certainly looks pretty impressive. It's got a massive build quality to it. It's pretty stout. And it's got a lot of knobs and features on the top panel that you'd find on most other synthesizers, but what makes it unique? Well, for me, this is not your typical Moog synthesizer. I think that as an engine itself, you typically have what you would have on a Moog, say for example a Mini Moog or a Voyager or a Memory Moog. But there's some features on here that you won't find on any other Moog or any other synthesizer for that matter. What impresses me the most about this synthesizer is the fact that a lot of what's on board can be tweaked to the umpteenth degree. There's a lot of flexibility in the oscillators and in the filter section. There's also a pretty amazing sequencer and an arpeggiator. But ultimately, what makes this keyboard ever so unique is the Eventide effects processor that's built into it. There's a lot of effects on board, reverbs, chorus, delays that you'd find on the Eventide stomp boxes or in a rack mount piece like the Eclipse. And if you've seen some of my previous videos, on some of them I promote, say for example, plugging your synthesizer into an Eventide processor to go to the next level in sound, right? Well, it's already built into this box. That effects processor adds so much sound and character to this synthesizer that it takes a Moog to the extra level, the farthest level, the next generation, if you will. And I'll highlight some of the sounds with the effects processor and without. At the heart of this synthesizer, you're going to find all the bells and whistles that you'd find on a typical synth. You'd find the oscillator section, the filter section, and the envelope section. What makes this thing unique is that you have 3 oscillators that have a variable blend from each particular waveform. So you can kind of sculpt that waveform into the in-between degree of a sine or a sawtooth or a pulse wave. That's pretty awesome and pretty flexible unto itself. But add to that 4 LFOs. Now these LFOs are the same way, so you can go variable from a sawtooth or a sine to a sample and hold or a ramp in between that flex. So that flexibility plus this flexibility adds so much character and tweakability to the synthesizer. It's really unique to kind of sculpt your own sounds on this synth. And I should say that I've heard a lot of people say that the Moog One is not your typical analog synth. And in some regards I can agree with that because a lot of the flex you get with the LFOs and the oscillators can't be found on another synthesizer. But does that mean it can't sound like a classic analog synth? It totally can. So if you kind of minimize some of the editing capability of it to, a more primitive stage like a Memory Moog or a Moog Voyager, it could definitely get to that analog tone texture. A lot of the presets that come with this synthesizer are overloaded in a way with some effects processing, like massive reverbs that overtake the sound of the synthesizer. That doesn't mean you have to stick with what the effects processor does. On occasion, if I want to get back to the roots of the analog synth inside this synth, I'll just totally strip off the effects, mute them out, and concentrate just specifically on the oscillators, the LFOs, and the filter. And in that regard, I've managed to make some really classic Memory Moog tones, Mini Moog tones, and even some CS80-ish kind of tones. But again, that effects processor does take it to the next level. I find that if I'm doing a soundtrack score, kind of like a science fiction kind of thing, or even some more modern electronic music, that the effects processor totally takes this synthesizer to that next stage. No longer am I limited to just the analog oscillators and the filters. The effects engine itself totally adds so much to the synthesizer. So to me, this is really 2 synthesizers in one. It can be primal and primitive analog synth, or it can get you into the whole sculpting territory that you'd find on a lot of modern science fiction soundtracks, modern EDM music, dark wave music, and even stuff that's even unimaginable from there on out. It's really an unlimited synthesizer in every way. So, we've talked about the LFOs, we've talked about the oscillators. What about the filter? Well, the filter is really special and unique as well. You see, there's two filters built into the synthesizer. You have a state variable filter, and you also have the typical ladder Moog filter. That ladder filter can be 1, 2, 3, or 4 pole. It can also be a high pass filter. The cool thing about these is that you can run these two filters at the same time, serial or parallel. That's pretty powerful. And once you hear that in action, you really get to see where this thing really shines, unlike any other synth. So, on top of this massive sounding synthesizer, you have a lot of control with this synthesizer. You have a really awesome sequencer section and a great arpeggiator section built in as well. This sequencer is pretty powerful unto itself, and I find myself driving external synthesizers with this sequencer quite a bit. I should also mention that this is 3-part multi-timbral, so when you do have it in dual part or 3-part multi-timbral, you lose your polyphony. And this particular synth is 8-note polyphonic, so you lose a lot and you lose a lot fast. But the cool thing is if I wanted to, I could have each different engine, because there's 3 Moog engines in here, with its own arpeggiator or sequencer. That's pretty powerful into itself. I mean, can you imagine having 3 sounds going at the same time, each one with its own sequencer or arpeggiator, all in one synthesizer? I mean, come on, that's pretty awesome. On top of all that, more control via this panel right over here, which you'll have your typical mod wheel, your pitch wheel, but you also have that XY pad. And you know, Moog, the latter generation of Moog synthesizers, really utilize the XY pad a lot, as in the Voyager. It's a pretty cool touch sensitivity feature that can be assigned to just about any parameter in the synth itself. On top of all that control that you have with the XY pad and the sequencer and the arpeggiators, you have the key bed itself. This is a Fatar key bed, and it feels fantastic. The touch feels phenomenal, and the aftertouch feels really well. You really can kind of dig into it pretty well and have that aftertouch kind of gradually move in and out. It's a very expressive key bed, and I've actually used it a lot to control external synthesizers and VSTs. Hats off to Moog for incorporating a world-class key bed into a world-class synthesizer. On top of what we have on the top panel and the key bed, we have a back panel, and the back panel has a lot to it. Let's talk about that. You have your typical MIDI in, out, and through. You've got USB on the back. You've got a multitude of connectors for input and output. And by the way, the input on the microphone has a 1/4-inch jack and an XLR jack for a microphone that can be entered into the mixer section itself. That's pretty cool. And you have a lot of CV outs. So this can control all your favorite analog synthesizers from the classic era to the modern era. Modular synthesizers, not a problem. All the CV patch points on the back can control it easily. Well, enough talk about this synthesizer. Let's check it out in action. There's a lot of banks loaded in this particular Moog One from the GeoSynth collection, and I'll be highlighting a lot of those sounds. Check it out.
I really hope you enjoyed checking out this Moog One synthesizer. It was really a joy to play and to describe to you. Be sure to check us out online at alamomusic.com. Hop on the YouTube channel and subscribe. We have a lot more videos coming up in the future. classic synthesizers, modern synthesizers, effects processors, samplers, and more. Lots of videos coming up soon. Check it out.